So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the navigational mesh in Unity to basically create a walkable surface for a player and constrain him to the surface that we want him to walk on. Now, before we go any further, this is a great time to use our collab service to commit our player changes. So let's go ahead and open up collab, implemented player controller. Go ahead and publish that. And we're good to go. Save your scene first and transferred. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about navigational meshes. So in Unity, the process of creating a nav mesh from our level is called nav mesh baking. The process collects the render meshes and terrains of our game objects and basically processes them to create a navigational mesh that approximates the walkable surface of a level. Now, what's going to be walkable on our level? Well, if we click on our market here, you'll see that our walkable surface is basically this collider, right? And in order for this to work, this needs to be a static object, which if you look to the right here, it's already checked static for us. In order to bake a mesh that's going to be walkable, the objects need to stay static. It means that this surface is a walkable surface. It's not going to be destroyed. It's going to stay in the game indefinitely. So we're going to go ahead and create a static mesh. Now, as of recently with Unity 5.5, I believe they do have dynamic mesh building now. So you can actually use a navigational mesh and recalculate the mesh at runtime. So if you had a game where you were to destroy a path, you could recalculate a new path and have it generated at runtime. But that's not what we're going to be focusing on. We want to focus on creating a path for our player. And the reason for that is that if you go ahead and play your game right now, you'll notice I can walk around just fine. However, what happens if I want to walk out into the distance here? I can, and I fall through the map. So to avoid that, let's go ahead and define a path that our player has to abide by. So looking at our market, game object, it's set to static. Let's go to Window, Navigation, and that's going to open up this little inspector panel here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Bake tab, and I'm going to select my market, and I'm going to go ahead and hit Bake. And you'll see here, instantly, it went ahead and banked all of the walkable surfaces that it thinks I can walk on. So if I could jump in this game, I could go on top of these buildings. It looks like it created a walkable surface on top of the wall here. Now, to clean this up and make it not as walkable, what I could do is I can clear the nav mesh. I can go ahead and select the object that I want to bake, which is basically just my floor, right? So let me go ahead and just select the floor. If that is possible. Let me see here if I have a floor. You know what? I do not believe so. I think we may actually have to just use the entire map, which actually is going to be just fine. So if I hit bake, we have our walkable surface. Now what we need to do now is we actually need to tell the player, hey, abide by this mesh, because right now I'm walking on it just fine, but I can still fall through the map. So that's where a navigational agent comes into play. So what is a navigational agent? A navigational agent is what allows an object to receive instructions on what it can walk on. So if we head back to the inspector, click on your player, and let's go ahead and add a new component called NavMeshAgent. This NavMeshAgent is what's going to force our player to abide by this navigational mesh. So, and as you can see here, we have some properties such as steering, obstacle avoidance, and pathfinding, where it can auto-traverse a path, if it can auto-repath, and so forth. This is more so for artificial intelligence. However, for our purposes, it's very simple. We're just using it for our player. But in a typical sense, you could use this, and you should use this, for any game where you have zombies or enemies that need to locate the player, and you want them to calculate the quickest route. Use a navigational mesh. Underneath the hood, it's using what's known as an A-star algorithm, which basically calculates the quickest path and the most efficient way to get to you. So it's really useful to use. But like I said, what we're using it for is just to keep our player on the map. So we add this navigational mesh and we're done. You will notice that the navigational mesh bottom is a little high there, and we might be able to set that offset just a bit more, just so it's at the feet of our player. But ultimately, it really shouldn't affect it. And what you can go ahead and do is you go ahead and run this, and we now snap to the floor. And as you can see here, I can move across the path, but if I try to walk off the map, I can't. I'm stuck here because my collision path says I can't move anywhere. You can see here that I can only move where it's acceptable. And as you can see, I can't walk off the map, which is perfect.